name is Chef Katy. I am the executive chef for Qdoba, and we are going to be making chicken tortilla soup today. Hopefully you ordered our family meals this week, and if you did, then you've got some leftovers, hopefully. So our family meals come with everything you need to make your favorite tacos and bowls from Qdoba right in your own home. And they come with a ton of food. They feed a family of 5. So if you get them and you've got leftovers and you don't know what to do with them, we are here to help, and that's what we're gonna do today. We're gonna make chicken tortilla soup using leftovers from our family meals. All right, let's get started. The basics for really any good soup, but definitely any Mexican soup, are sort of all the aromatics that you would think of for any soup, any dish. Garlic, onions, etc. So I started cooking some white onion. White onion is my favorite to cook with. It is very traditional in Mexico. You think of the red onion as something that you would eat more raw. It's great for ceviches, for pico de gallo. This is something you're gonna cook. And the thing that's different from like a brown onion is that the white onion is really bright. It's got this like crisp, bright, clean flavor that is different from some of the more sort of sweet notes that you get from a brown onion. So I already chopped this up and got this started cooking, so you didn't have to sit and watch me cook onions. But I just sliced this. So I'm gonna show you how I slice it, just so you can see. But the bottom line is we're gonna blend this. So you don't have to be precise with how you're cutting this. So I'm just cutting off the 2 ends. I'm gonna cut this right down the middle. Take off the outside skin right here. And then I'm just gonna cut this into slices because like I said, this is all going into the blender, so it doesn't have to be perfect. I always like to do this little move. Take this part here and then flip it down flat, and it's just easier to cut through. Because I think that move of constantly chopping gets harder the higher the onion is. So that's my tip. But if you like to take it slow, just go one piece at a time. Like I said, these do not have to be too perfect. So that's just to show you what I did. I already have some cooking in my pan. So I'm gonna move these. Don't know where I'm gonna move them. I guess just right here. All right. So the next thing we're gonna talk about are the chilies. So this recipe that I'm gonna use today uses dried Pasilla Negra chilies. So I'll show you what those look like when I'm done washing my hands. Okay, so these are chili negras. They are long, black dried chilies. Now, if you don't have these, there are totally other options. This is what they look like. They're beautiful. You could use Ancho chilies if you have those, or if that's what you can find in your market. Anchos are more round and squat. Ancho means wide. Or you could use canned chipotles and adobo if you have that. You could also just skip this step entirely. You could do, if you've got leftover pico de gallo from our family meals, then you can totally do that. This onion is making me cry a little bit. Okay, so I'm gonna use this. This is sort of more traditional for this soup, and I love the flavor that this gives. So I am going to just break off the top. Oh, it's kind of, yeah, break off the top. And then I'm just gonna cut this into roughly like, hey, quiet. Sorry, my dog doesn't know I'm on Instagram Live. Cut these into roughly 1-inch pieces. And then I'm gonna keep all the seeds. The seeds have flavor and they've got some heat in them, which I want. So I'm gonna take all of this. The other thing I'm gonna do is I have some peeled garlic here. I'm just really gonna smash this. It's all going in the blender, so it doesn't have to be perfect. You could do a rough chop, but I think this will be fine. So let's go over to the stove. Okay, so I'm gonna take this garlic and these chilies and put them in my pot. And you can come look at my pot and see what my onions are looking like. So that's where I've gotten them. They're really nice and brown. They're not completely soft and caramelized yet, but they're kind of halfway there, which is gonna add some beautiful sort of depth of flavor, a little bit of sweetness. And I'm just gonna stir this for about 1 minute. I'm just really trying to get some of that raw garlic flavor off of my garlic and toast these chilies just a little bit. Traditionally, when you are cooking with chilies like this, you want to dry toast them in a pan or with a little bit of oil and then soak them in hot water and really rehydrate these chilies. We don't have time for that. This is an easy weeknight meal, so this is sort of how we're gonna go about it today. while those are cooking slowly, I want to show you two other things. So the other base for this soup is tomato. Now, when I make this at home in non-COVID days, I use canned, diced, fire-roasted tomatoes. I have some tomatoes, fresh tomatoes, that were sitting on my counter that were about to go bad. So I'm going to use these, but I do like the flavor of the roasted tomatoes better. So that's normally what I would use. So I'm going to just dump these in my blender and leave that here. And then here's the other secret trick. So this is totally optional. You do not have to do this. If you don't have a tortilla, completely ignore this step. But if you've had our tortilla soup at Qdoba, it's got this like amazing sort of corn flavor to it. So that's from corn. And what we're going to do is sort of a really traditional method that is used in making moles is we're going to use corn tortillas as a thickening agent for our soup. Now, traditionally, you don't have to do this step that I'm doing where I'm sort of torching it a little bit, but I just love the added flavor that these burned notes are going to add, so that's me. But you don't have to do this. You could, if you had an extra tortilla that was starting to go bad or a fresh one or whatever, you could just add it straight to your blender. If you have dried masa harina, you could use that too. But normally, when I'm making this at home for a weeknight meal, I don't even do this step. But if you love our tortilla soup at Qdoba and you want to get a little bit close to it, this is one of those tricks. The other trick that I would say that I'm, again, not going to do because this is a weeknight meal is roasted poblanos. So if you buy Ancho or Pasilla, sometimes they call them, but the green, they look like green bell peppers, but they're pointy at the end. If you buy those and roast them over the open flame, just like I'm doing with this tortilla, you can then steam them and then run them under cold water and take the outside skins off. And you get something called roasted poblanos or rajas. Rajas are when you cut them into strips, and it's such a delicious chili, and it's got fresh green notes, but it's got this like smoky flavor that you just cannot emulate. And that is also in our Qdoba tortilla soup. So that would be something that you could also add if you were trying to make this more similar to what we do in the restaurant. But I'm trying to be simple today. This is a weeknight meal. Okay, so all of this is going to go in the blender. Oh, I have one more thing I wanted to show you. I forgot. This is another optional item, but this is Mexican oregano. I love the flavor this adds. I'm going to put it straight into the blender. It is delicious and it's floral. It is totally different than traditional Italian oregano. So if you don't have this, please don't substitute Italian oregano. It'll make everything taste like a tomato sauce. If you want to substitute something because you don't have this, I would go more the route of cumin seed or coriander seed. So something more in the cilantro family instead of that. Okay, so this is a little warm. I'm going to pick this up and transfer these to my blender. You know what, I'm going to take this down and try not to burn our counters and our cabinets. Okay, so I just scraped my onions, my garlic, and my toasted pasilla chilies in here. Now, the next thing I'm going to add is chicken stock. You do not have to add chicken stock. In fact, I don't have chicken stock. Could not get chicken stock from my online grocery store delivery right now. So I have bouillon cubes in my fridge. So I just use that with hot water. But you could use water. You could use vegetable stock. Our Qdoba tortilla soup is totally vegan. So if you're trying to make a vegetarian version of this, just go that route. Water or vegetable stock is totally fine. So I'm just going to use a little bit so that everything blends really smoothly. And then the rest is going to go in my pan when I deglaze that in a minute. Okay, so this is going in the blender. This is going to be very loud and not very fun for a second. Ready to test it? Sorry, guys. I do want to take a pause and talk about something I forgot. Sorry, I get to stop talking and stop forgetting. Stop thinking. Salt. Salt is super important. And what I'm going to show you in this next step is really the classic way that all Mexican sauces are built, and soups as well, but sauces specifically. And so this step right here, this chili paste, which we are going to base our soup off of, is really important for developing the flavor of this soup. So make sure you add salt. Okay, sorry, a little bit more blending. Thanks for that. Okay, so I kept my pot on this whole time. If you don't have a great high-powered blender, I would maybe turn this off. I wouldn't do this step at one time. I would do the straining step, which we're about to do, and then heat your pot. But I am very lucky with a very fancy blender, so I'm gonna do two things at once. So now I just need to, what is called frying this paste. So I'm going to add this paste to hot oil and fry this sauce up. So if my onions and garlic didn't get cooked enough, or if they're not, they're sort of, if you think of these flavors as that they haven't really melded yet. Like you think of a stew or a braise or something that cooks for a really long time. The reason it tastes so good is because all of these flavors have had time to combine. This that I just blended for 30 seconds hasn't yet. But this frying step is gonna help get it there really quickly. So there's definitely some pieces of seeds in here. So I'm just gonna put it through this strainer. It's totally something you could skip. Your soup is just gonna have a little more texture if you skip this step. And texture is not bad. And if you can hear, my pan is sizzling, and that's on purpose. So like I said, if you have a blender that probably didn't work as well as me, or you're new to this, maybe do the straining and then turn the oil, add some oil and turn your stove on. So maybe don't do it all at one time, but just takes a few seconds. Sounds like it's a lot of work, but it's really not. Okay, so come look at my pan. So this is our chili paste. And I'm gonna turn the heat up now to about medium-high and get this a little bit bubbly. Now, while we're doing that, I'm gonna keep talking to you about the toppings for tortilla soup because I don't want to burn this. So chilies, and especially the tomato has a lot of sugar in it, and the chilies have a tendency to get bitter if they're burnt. So I don't want parts of this to burn. I don't want this to get stuck to the bottom of the pan, but I do want to heat it up and cook it together a little bit longer. So I'm just gonna keep this moving until I start to see a little bit of bubbles, and then I'm gonna add my stock, and then we're ready to go. So while I do that, let's talk about the tortilla portion of tortilla soup. So believe it or not, that tortilla that I added to this is not actually what the tortilla is all about. It's about the tortilla toppings. So I don't know if any of you watched last week when we made chiles, but there's a couple dishes in Mexico that are completely designed just to be uses for leftover or dried up tortillas. One of those is chilaquiles. They fry them into chips, and then they add sauce to them for a breakfast dish. Another is this, tortilla soup. Okay, I am getting nice bubbles here, so I'm gonna add my chicken stock. So I've got a full 2 quarts that I'm gonna add. Again, you could totally use water if that's what you've got, beef stock, chicken stock, whatever you like. The other thing I'm gonna add right now is I have some leftover chicken from the family meals. So I'm gonna add that. If you had steak, you could totally add that. If you had no protein, but you wanted to add some, you could add some canned beans to this. Or if you got the family meal and had leftover black beans, that's all good too. Okay, I'm gonna let that come up to a simmer, and then let's go talk about the toppings. So the chips are really what this is about. This is a great way to use chips that are starting to go bad. So we're gonna use chips today, but traditionally this is made from fresh tortillas that you fry into chips. So you'll see really beautiful versions of this where they're not necessarily in tortilla chip shape, where they're cut into really beautiful strips or into other shapes, and that's because people are making their chips themselves. We're not gonna do that. Again, weeknight meal, we are just gonna go straight from chips. So the last thing that we add to this soup are going to be just crushed up chips. I'm gonna break them into pieces, maybe like that size, pieces that are reasonable that you would eat. So The other thing that I love is some lime. This is beautiful served with lime juice. So I'm gonna cut this into wedges and put this on my plate so that people can add that to their own liking. The other thing is the cheese. So shredded cheese is very traditional in this. Traditionally, you would use something like a melting jack cheese. We're gonna use our leftover cheese from the family meal. So that's gonna go straight into my bowl, right at the bottom. And then I've got this. I'm gonna add a little bit of sour cream here. You can add it to the top if you want, but it's gonna get sort of buried underneath the chips anyway, so you may as well skip a step. And then I have some avocado that is totally turning brown, but there's a couple salvageable pieces, and I just can't bring myself to let avocado go to waste, so that's gonna go in the bottom as well. And there'll be these like beautiful surprise nuggets that you find as you're digging through your soup. All right, let's go check on our soup. So it should be coming up to a simmer, or it's about to. And I'm just gonna taste this and check on seasoning. It's really good. It needs more salt for sure. But like I said, this is a super simple meal. And if you want to make this thicker than this, add more tortillas, add cornstarch. If you want to make this spicier, I would just serve this with like chopped up raw jalapenos maybe, or raw serrano chilies. This base is just really nice. It's really silky because we strained it. I'm gonna taste it again. It's perfect. Okay, I'm gonna bring this to my cutting board, make a spot for it. And we're gonna serve this up. Okay, so I'm just gonna ladle this soup. I'm gonna dig down there and get a couple pieces of chicken. And I'm gonna ladle this right over. And you can see it's immediately gonna start melting some of that cheese that we put in there. Oh, that's so good. I love that like really rich color that you get. Okay, then I'm gonna add a little bit of cilantro to the top. Totally optional if you don't have fresh cilantro in your house. If you had leftover pico from the family meal, you could absolutely use that. And then I'm just gonna sort of start stacking pieces of tortilla in here. All right. That is it, guys. That is our tortilla soup. Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate everyone's time, and we appreciate you supporting Qdoba during these crazy times. It's a wild time, but we are here to help you and here to serve your family. Thank you so much. Stay safe.